Okie dokie. Okay. Welcome to the Love Language Leadership Summit. I am Shannon Wooten, and with me today, I'm so excited about this. I actually text my husband, text my BFF, like, I'm so excited about the next 5 minutes that I'm about to jump on a call with the Master Certified Coach. That's the way I describe him. Published author of The Brink, How Great Leadership is Invented, founder and president of Pinnacle Coaching Incorporated, and if you can even believe it, yes, there is more. He is the Chief Development Officer and Coach Training Program Senior Leader of Accomplishment Coaching Leadership Program, which is where I graduated with my 12-month coaching leadership program. I am truly honored and elated and just exuberant with energy, if you guys can't already tell, to have with us today business and executive leadership coach and speaker, Mark Hunter.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so excited. And if any of you are tuning in for the first time, you're catching this on day whatever it is today, whether it's via YouTube or on a podcast or on Instagram, please go back and watch the very first day one of a Love Language Leadership Summit. And you'll get the download on how this is all being ran, and these thought-provoking leaders of the world came to be here with me. And every single one of them is coming into this completely uninformed. So this is fun for me. I hope this is going to be fun for you. And if you watch the very first video, you will see that all of this spawned simply because I sent an email. They're not being paid to be here. They're donating their time. And if I was just talking to Mark about this before we hit record, if I learned anything amongst the million things that I've learned in accomplishment coaching and from being a coach is we always miss 100% of the shots that we do not take. And that was something that was instilled in me by yours truly, Mark, in accomplishment coaching amongst many of the other leaders. So that is my segue into our very first question that I have for you today. And that is, what made you say yes to contribute to this?
I loved what you were doing. The conversation about love and how it lives in the world now it's either seems to be like too mushy or it's something that's done in too clinical a way. And I love that you wanted to have this conversation as a conversation and really explore things. I love that the unscriptedness of this. I love that you want to just sort of pick my brain and have a conversation about this. That's what lit me up about it. So the quick answer to your question is I was an instant yes. Simply because we were going to have a conversation about this in a way that wasn't either clinical or that I'd seen done before. So that's why.
Thank you. And I love that too. And just for everybody that's listening and or watching, just to give you, secret behind the scenes insight into this, Mark and I were actually just talking about that before we even hit record, that there's this relationship to love that it's kind of frou-frou. And if you approach something from love, then it takes the power out of it. And I have a completely different perspective about love. I believe personally that love gives us power. Love invites us to explore the things that maybe could scare the shit out of us and gives us that extra oomph to pursue it, to keep going in the face of fear. And one of the things that I haven't talked about yet, I don't think, in the summit is how important it was for me to have a male perspective, talk and speak about love and be representative. Because I think in our culture, whether it's conditioned throughout, years of learned behavior or the environment we're raised in, that sometimes men get a bad rap about love. That it is almost frowned upon and you're weak if you have an opinion or you embody love.
Yeah, we're taught that. I think that we're as men, we're taught and conditioned, like you said, not to express love except in certain ways, and not to actually have love be something that's important to us. That's a high value for us as well. So I think that it's not just that we get a bad rap. I think it's earned. We've earned this. We've taught each other this as well. So there's a lot of unlearning that especially men, not just men, but especially men need to do around what they've learned about what love means and what it doesn't mean and what it means about them to talk about it, especially out loud.
Yeah. And I love that too, because, given the juxtaposition on the opposite side of things, being a female, it's almost expected that you are so fluffy, so much sparkles and unicorns and wearing pink, and we're almost saddling the line of trying to discern, well, who am I allowed to be in tandem with what is the world, as you said it, and I love this word, conditioned us to be. And when just sharing a little bit of history, I remember the first time that Mark came into my program and my group that I was being, you know, educated in, and he spoke, and one of the first things that I felt from you was unfiltered, uninhibited love. There was no agenda that I felt from you other than, hey, I want you to tap into you.
Yeah.
So speaking of and on that, what does love mean to you?
Wow. This is a conversation we could have for many hours and days.
Sure.
But you know, that thing you talked about, that moment of walking into the room and you being able to get the experience of love from me, the way I hold love is that it's something that you embody. It's not something that you do. It's also not just loving that person or loving that person or loving that person. It's being love and being loving. And from there, you can actually be that whatever room you walk into. And it's not necessarily in the words you say either. It's not in the language or the eye contact and all the things we think of as sort of indicative of exemplifying love. I think it's actually in first loving yourself, but then having that include all the people around you and what you're doing, you know, and what you're committed to and the conversations you have, so that those conversations and those relationships are had from love rather than it being something that I go do in that place, like go do love over there, but not so much over there. Then it becomes a tactic, right?
Yeah. And that is so interesting to me too, because I read something this morning from I think she's a coach and she's a spiritual guru and she's a writer. So I read it in her book. Her name's Teal Swan, and she was actually talking about the embodiment of love through you first. And the example that she gave was the example that we often refer to, you know, you can't serve from an empty cup, and it's all based on your perception whether a cup is half full or half empty. And in her example, she enlightened me and, you know, check in for yourself if you're listening or you're watching, with the respect of continue to just overserve yourself, whatever love recipe that you're indulging on, because by rights, when you overserve yourself, anybody that's within your general circumference, that spillover is going to get on them. And when you mentally think about that as, you know, a table dynamic, if you're eating lunch, you're drinking coffee, you're having champagne, whatever your beverage of choice is, the spillover is going to get onto not only your plate, into your silverware and your napkin, but into the direct area of everyone else that is around you. And that all comes from you serving yourself first. Yes. And going back to what we were talking about in the beginning of that presence that you have with love, that when you came into that room and he was just speaking, he was just being himself in truly in his essence, it was a permission that you gave in that moment to me that I had always harbored, again, being a woman, of if you're overly sensitive, then you can't be a contender. If you're overly loving, then you can't be assertive and brilliant at the same time, because you need to be nurturing and pretty and soft. And what Mark gave to me in that moment was, I can give love with such a force that I am actually transferring it from me to other person as an act of permission.
Beautiful.
It was incredible. And so for those that are listening and hearing the genius that you're just truthfully giving of yourself, because it's just truth of you, what does love mean to you then about other people?
Say more. So you mean, what do I, when I love other people, what does that mean to me?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in how somebody else hears it and like how you receive it. So go with what you're interpreting.
You know, I think that the way that you hold and relate to other people is just a reflection of the way you hold and relate to yourself. Mm-hmm. So to your point earlier, I think that self-love is where it starts. And then from there, I can actually go be loving with other people. You know, not just the work that we do as coaches and leaders, like we did at Accomplishment Coaching together, but I think the work that we do out there in the world with other human beings, partnering, trying to create new things. You know, in personal relationships, professional relationships, all relationships where we're intending to connect. I think that love is the thing that starts relationship being effective. And I think that it's ultimately a choice. And that's not how it's romanticized. I think love is romanticized into this thing that happens. We fall in love, whatever that means. You know, we get hit, we get love struck, and all these things. And I think that's over romanticized, and it creates that sort of idea that love is fragile and it happens by chance. And I hope it happens to me, and things like that occur. So with other people, I think that love is ultimately and most powerfully a choice. And love is not always gentle, and love is not always doesn't always have everybody feel good, and doesn't have us say the nice, friendly thing all the time. Love is honest. You know, love is is challenging. Love is uncomfortable. Love is all those things. It's all the things that you're willing to do when you relate to another person, sort of as yourself. You know, like you're willing to be with them as you're with yourself from love.
It's so interesting what you pointed out too. I never really noticed that before. Falling in love. Like when you fall, it's painful.
Yeah.
Like when someone strikes you because you're love struck, you're like, ow. Like I think about any times you've stubbed your toe or you hit your funny bone and you're like, that was not funny. Or even the example of Cupid, you know, shooting you with a bow and arrow, like somebody is shooting you. So it's very interesting that societally there is almost this perception of it has to be hard.
Yes.
And it has to be painful in order for you to feel like you're experiencing it or it's impacting you.
Yeah. Or it's we're lucky and it's scarce.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like it happens to you. We're almost victimized by it. Like it either happened to me or it didn't. But either way, I didn't have any choice in the matter, is the way it's romanticized.
Right.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite side of that too, if there's love lost.
Yes.
Right? Whether there's a dissolution of a relationship, or, you know, if you lose someone that is very near and dear to you, that, you know, that's it. Yeah. You're, you know, it didn't work out for you. You must be unlovable.
Yes.
Or because it's painful, then you didn't do it the right way.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Shannon, but I actually went through a divorce last year.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to your example that you just brought up about love lost, you know, our relationship as it was ended after 10 years of marriage, but I still love her. And there's no, you know, I don't think that love has to end with a relationship, but I think that in a romanticized version of love where it either happens to you or not, or you're lucky if it shows up and unlucky if it goes away, I should be angry and bitter and hateful and have all kinds of nasty things to say about her. But I don't. She's my friend. And actually, in some ways, we're better friends now than we were a couple of years ago, even. So I think your example, I'm living your example as we speak.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important.
It's interesting too. So thank you for sharing that so honestly and transparently with all of us. Because without even, you know, being able to visually see or know who's actually listening, I know that people can relate to that. But what's interesting too is that when you said that, I had to, and this is something we talk about in coaching, like notice where you get hooked, right? So I had to, because my human response is to be like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Exactly. Yes.
And then you know, this is something that for those that are listening again and or watching, that's not wrong. I don't want to assert that you showing an expression of sympathy and or compassion for somebody is wrong, but what am I sorry about? If you're not sorry, why am I sorry?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think, and I agree, I subscribe to your same belief system, that loving ourselves is the first step to being able to love other people and to being honest with ourselves and other people as well. And sometimes being so loving with ourselves and with other people means having the wherewithal to create boundaries between ourselves and other people, being equipped to acknowledge what our expectations are on ourselves and other people and what our standards are.
Yes.
And I think, especially in the world that we live in today, where social media is a very prevalent part of society, there's the damnation of it for all the things that people, you know, find wrong with it, whatever that is to you. And there's also the connectivity of it, which allows us to be effervescent and more open and available to other people than ever before.
Yes, absolutely.
So because we live in this world where this is happening, I mean, my nephew's 11 and he has his own cell phone, and I'm like, what are you doing with that? Who are you talking to? You don't have anybody to talk to. You don't call me, I'm your aunt. But being in the world where this is so prevalent in our society, I'm curious then, how does love influence what you do as a business owner?
It's at the heart of what I do as a business owner, and my business happens to be a relationship, right? I happen to be a coach, and I'm a leadership and executive coach. So I'm coaching people around their leadership and their relationship to their leadership and their relationship to the teams they lead and the organizations that they work for, that they own. And in that conversation, relationship is always at the center of that, right? And I don't just mean relationship between people, but relationship between me and my role, between me and power, between me and love, between me and being vulnerable and risking intimacy and things like that. So those conversations come up constantly. And you can't have that conversation honestly from an unloving place. I can't have a conversation with clients about the things that they feel vulnerable about, that they're scared of, that they want to say but are afraid to say. I can't be in that conversation with them if I'm not coming from a loving place. And so I actually have to love them. And this is the tricky part with love, no matter what they're doing, right? No matter who they're being, they can show up angry at me. And my job, not just because I'm getting paid, but my job as a human being in relationship with another human being is to love them anyway, however they show up. If love is conditional upon you showing up the right way, which I think is how it lives, unfortunately, from the way we're taught. If you can only be loved and show up the right way, when you show up the right way, then you're going to perform for me to earn your love. And so, especially as a coach, intending to have very authentic, very vulnerable conversations with people that are actually going to have an impact and change their lives, I've got to be making sure that I'm creating a space with them in a relationship where they can show up however they are and know that I'm still going to love them and be loving. And then they're not performing and dancing for me and trying to get me to love them and earn it. So the answer to your question, which I just think maybe over answered, is I have it that love and relationship is at the center of making a difference for other people. At leadership, of the center of leadership, it's at the center of success. It's at the center of results. It all boils down to relationship and love.
Wow. So what I hear is coming full circle, and it's so interesting to hear how other people feel and receive love in their lives and how it shows up, and as a reflection of them, as a reflection of the relationships they have, is that for you, love is a relationship, not only with you, but with other people. And it sounds like, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but like it's an energy, a relationship to that energy that you take responsibility for. But also you take responsibility for the fact that loving yourself and loving other people means that it's a two-way street for potential disappointment, right?
Yes.
Right. I get to disappoint other people, be in an act of loving myself, and they don't have to understand it. And that's okay with me. That's my boundary. That's my standard. That's my expectation with myself. And I also hear that, but then I have to be willing to flip the script.
Yes.
And be okay with being disappointed by other people and not have to wrap that up in how worthy I am of love.
Beautiful. And if I can bring my humanity and faults to you, and you can bring your humanity and faults to me, and we can still be loved, I think that's the highest level of relationship and the highest level of love. Wow. Yeah, that we can actually be who we truly authentically are with each other is honest, first of all, but it's also the most loving thing we can do.
I mean, if you guys are watching this or listening to this, I really want to be like one of those dolls outside of like a car dealership with their arms like, those little wind things. Like that's how I feel when I hear people talk about love in an unfiltered way. Yeah. And that's, I think, just the innate beauty of who you are as a human, of what you give to other people. And if you're watching him and you're feeling that from him, or you're listening to this and you're feeling that from him, I invite you to allow yourself to go back and rewind and re-listen to those things and challenge yourself to see what it is that you see in him that you're not seeing for you. in envisioning yourself that way and developing that relationship to yourself, imparting that wisdom on you. Because what I hear from Mark is that he's willing to continue to evolve and learn from himself in the spirit of love every day, and in every way, in every relationship, and who he is. And I invite you, if you feel challenged by this, especially if you feel challenged by it and you want to run and you want to hide, rewind, go back and see where there's the gap for you in feeling that way about you.
Beautiful.
So I haven't asked anybody this question. I'm throwing a curveball into the things here. If you could impart one piece of whatever it is that you want, wisdom, insert word here, for the listeners or the viewers today about love, what would that be?
It would be to be willing to risk getting it wrong and being hurt. I think that the access point to love in a relationship is the willingness to be vulnerable, right? And to share of oneself intimately. So and this goes back to the choice piece, right? It's actually choosing to be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Choosing to be willing to risk being hurt or let down, or have somebody, treat me in a way that's not loving and still love them. It feels in our culture of win-lose, it feels like we're losing and they're winning, right? So we usually protect ourselves from that, but that's access to power, because from there, people don't have to show up certain ways. We don't need people to sort of conform to our belief systems or behaviors that we think are right. I can love you however you show up. It doesn't mean I'm a doormat, right? It doesn't mean that I let you be, I become your punching bag and I don't take care of myself. But it does mean that in our partnership, you don't have to walk the straight and narrow. You don't have to be perfect, and neither do I. So I think it's that choice to be willing to risk being hurt or let down.
That gets me all in the feels, tearing up over here. So now that everybody is just blown away and just under the warm, cozy blanket of Mark Hunter's wisdom and honesty and heart, which thank you so much for, where can they find you? What do you have going on right now that people need to know about?
Oh, great. Well, you mentioned my book, The Brink. They can find that on my website, pinnacle-coaching.net. And I'm actually in the middle of writing my second book, which is actually about relationship and how to build relationship and partnership from this loving place. So another reason that I was so excited to talk about this is because I'm in the middle of writing about it almost constantly right now. So it's perfect. So that's my website, though. Mark, my email address is mark@pinnacle-coaching.net. And that's my website.
Wonderful. I cannot wait for your second book to drop. If you don't have it, it's fine. But do you have a title yet? Anything that's in kind of like mulling around inside your head?
There's a working title that I'll share with you. It's called the Partnership Manifesto. But we're not sure that that's actually going to be the title. And I'm writing it in partnership with someone else too. So it's actually something we're in the middle of writing with a consultant now. Yeah.
Wow. I can't wait. So go check out Mark. If you guys are curious about him, I'll have all of his information in the show notes, on YouTube, on Instagram, and on iTunes, or wherever you're listening to the podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me here, and thanks for doing this. This is important. This needs to happen. Thanks for being the one.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. A big thank you to you, the audience, for joining us. See the show notes, as I said, for a special freebie from me if you're tuning in on YouTube, and for, as I said, Mark's contact links on how to connect with him. And because love is meant to be shared and sharing is caring, if you like this conversation, if something stood out for you, if it was impactful for you in any way, please feel free to share this message or this content wherever and whatever forum you heard it on with a friend of yours, or contact us directly with any questions that you have. I know we'll be happy to answer and address those for you as well. For all of you that are listening on whatever medium that you're joining us, thank you for stopping by. Be good to yourself for fuck's sake, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.